please welcome Alistair Goodman, so the CEO and General Manager of Ericsson Emodo, and then Andrew Lazzaro, so the campaign architect of the Broadway League. So to you guys.
Great. Well, thanks for having us today. Could we go to the next slide? So just a very little bit of background on Emodo. We're a programmatic activation platform focused on cookieless audiences and immersive creative. We're a part of Ericsson, the telecom company that powers much of the world's mobile infrastructure. And there are really two things that we do well. We build predictive models using AI and ML to be able to deliver audiences without identifiers that are large scale and entirely privacy compliant. And we also really deliver truly immersive creative, augmented reality, which you're going to see some of today, native, truly dynamic, intelligent creative. And all of this is hosted in the Emodo Exchange, which is a marketplace where buyers and sellers can come together and transact programmatically. And you can move through the slides there, animated, please. So today we're going to show you a case study that actually gives an example of how this works and delivers some of the kinds of outcomes that we're seeing. If you can move through the slides, please. For this campaign, we were thrilled that Omnicom and Resolution Media approached Emodo to help them with a big challenge, which was, how do we reopen Broadway? And so here to tell you about that is Andrew Lazzaro, who is the campaign architect for the Broadway League.
Go ahead if you want to move to the next slide. One more. One more. So as everybody knows, as the pandemic unfolded in March of 2020, a lot of things changed. And very quickly, we found all 41 theaters and the city of New York closing down. So you can go to the next slide. This created a huge shift in an industry that for over 125 years had never really closed its doors, with the exception of 3 days over September 11th. And now we found over 90,000 people out of work across the 13 unions that support those 41 theaters, and a huge economic impact of over $15 billion to New York City. So on the next slide, and it's not just the Broadway tickets and those 90,000 people, it's all of the associated hotel, restaurant, retail, entertainment, and transportation industries that support live theater in New York, which is the #1 reason people come to New York City. And so we needed to do something. And so for the first time, the industry came together and created a campaign. Next slide. The job was to excite, encourage, and welcome fans back into theaters in September of 2020 when we reopened, 2021, and really find a way to remind people why they love Broadway. And that campaign became This is Broadway. Next slide. And the campaign had a lot of work. There were huge amounts of assets, new websites, 6-second, 15-second, 30-second anthem spots, huge out-of-home presence across New York State, the city and the Northeast Corridor, social media, an ultimate ticket giveaway and contest, win tickets for all the Broadway shows that had never been done. But it was all geared towards the current economic buyer that we knew a lot about. And you go to the next slide. One of the interesting things that happened, and take a click, is that around 30% of the ticket buyers represent over 70% of the revenue. And as we started to come back, we ran into two obstacles. You can hit it again. The first was the Delta variant. That started in September. And the second, you can hit it again, was the Omicron variant. And that kept our economic buyer at home. And one of the things we began to see through the ticketing data was a younger buyer emerging on the left-hand side. You can hit it again. And we were really curious about this buyer. Broadway wasn't new to them, but they were new to the purchasing process. And if you go to the next slide, they were also much younger than our traditional buyer. And we were seeing spikes in that community. And none of the assets that we had or the media strategy that we had been running for 8 weeks was really reaching them and engaging them. And so if you go to the next slide, we needed to quickly, really quickly, come up with a strategy to capture their attention during the upcoming holiday season as we went into Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Hanukkah in New York, inspire them with what was on the shelf, all of the different pockets. And that was really critical. So we needed a partner that could work with our assets and the really unique pool of data that we had to go after this group. And if you go to the next slide, we were working with over 17 million seats by 3.2 million transactions. We had broken that down into 15 segments using recency, frequency, monetary, and location drivers, and then enhanced that data with 19 other feeds around demographic, psychographic, and behavioral information, so that we really had a rich understanding of whom our audience was, but we didn't have the right message. And that's what we found in Emodo, someone who could work within our creative constraints and really activate this data. Alistair?
Next slide, please. Yeah, so Emodo spent the last 4 years building predictive audiences and training models based on a variety of different data sets, and most notably mobile operator data sets. And so what we did is we took all of the segmentation data that Andrew shared with us, and if you advance through the slide, and we took some ID-based audiences where they were available, but the Broadway League was very focused on and concerned about privacy. And so we built a set of very large-scale predictive audiences. And then on top of that, we layered a whole geocontextual targeting capability to make sure we were targeting those areas that were most likely to be coming to New York for theater. And then on top of that, harnessing some of the new kind of contextual signals as well that are big drivers of performance. And so for the creative, the Emodo Creative Lab and our partners were able to assemble an augmented reality experience for this campaign that was delivered in line against this kind of targeting. And so let us show you the work. Roll the video.
On March 13, 2020, all 41 Broadway theaters in New York City closed and would remain shuttered for 18 months. Broadway theater contributes nearly $15 billion to New York's economy, and with 90,000 Broadway League members out of work, the industry and the city needed a high-profile campaign to bring audiences back. When theaters reopened in September 2021, the Broadway League launched an integrated campaign to inspire fans and remind them of what they were missing. During the campaign, data revealed a new economic buyer emerging that was younger, more social, and technologically ahead of the pre-pandemic ticket buyers. The industry needed to build a meaningful connection with this new buyer and bring awareness of the breadth of shows available. The Broadway League, alongside Omnicom's Resolution Media, engaged Emodo and its partners to create and execute the holiday show Globe, a mobile-first augmented reality experience to target this audience. The show Globe transports the audience to the center of Times Square and surrounds them with a selection of currently playing Broadway shows, complete with holiday greetings from some of the industry's biggest stars. The response was nothing short of spectacular. This new standard of immersive targeted ad is the future of audience attention, and it's available now, only from Emodo.
Great. If we could go back to the slides. Andrew, do you want to run through some of the results?
Yeah, so look, as it said, we found 3.2 minutes of engagement here on average. That compared to 23 seconds for all of our other assets. So it was a really thrilling opportunity for us to see these customers who were trying to figure out a new purchasing process engaging on the next one. The other thing that was really important is we saw a 22% share rate, which was much higher than we were seeing other assets shared. But we also noticed over half of those shares were happening in theaters before 8 p.m. when people were going in, sitting down as an audience, and then sharing this content with other friends and endorsing and advocating for Broadway. Next. So that was really exciting for us. At 9 out of 10 of the top engaged shows in the Show Globe experience saw a sales increase during the month of December. And finally, next slide. We put 10% of our media budget behind this and found that it was over 30% of audience engagement. So it really speaks to the value of augmented reality and these types of experiences for this audience.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. And thanks, Alistair. Like once again, a campaign with an amazing uplift, and really loved the video and be able to see the creative and the campaign. So I think the question that came to my mind is like, I think the Broadway show, I think, like amazing. And then obviously AR makes sense, right? And I think sometimes brands have some, blockers to leverage this technology because they don't know how to use it, or they probably don't think that's their brand, and creating a campaign with AR is literally like linked to their purpose and what they do. So I think the question for me is like how you could make AR for everybody, and is it for everybody also?
Yeah, so we've actually been running AR campaigns across a variety of different categories, things like e-commerce to convenience stores and a variety of different retailers. And I think what we've tried to do is make the assembly of these campaigns both really cost-effective and fairly easy. They are actually a great way at the end of the day to drive huge levels of engagement with your target audience. And so they're not nearly as hard as you would think to execute, because we've been able to componentize a lot of how you build and execute these campaigns.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to Alistair's point is we gave them 4 weeks to be in market from the time we engaged to the time that they started, and they pulled a rabbit out of a hat. It was extraordinary work.
Amazing. So you're saying it's for everybody, it's cheap, and you can implement it quickly.
Yep.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you so much.